Today in my kitchen, I'm going to recreate a recipe for vegetable makhani. The original recipe that I saw was made by Chef Sanjyot Keer from Your Food Lab, and it intrigued me because I've seen this dish on almost every Indian restaurant, some kind of makhani recipe, whether it's chicken makhani or paneer makhani, or in this case, vegetable makhani. And I wanted to see, is it easy to create this at home, and will it still taste delicious? So come along with me as we make vegetable makhani in my kitchen. Please watch this video till the end because there are some shortcuts I will show you, and also some substitutions that I have made, and also some modifications I have made. So let's go ahead and make paneer, not paneer, sorry, vegetable makhani in our kitchen. There are two parts to this recipe. First, we will be making a gravy, and then we will prep the vegetables to put in the gravy. So let's go ahead and start with our gravy first. To make the gravy, I need, for whole spices, I need about a small 1/2 inch piece of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of cumin seeds, 3 green I meant coriander, to say 3 cardamom. Leaves. This is 1 onion, just sliced thinly. Then I need 1/4 cup of cashews, about 3 or 4 red chilies, 1 tablespoon of kasuri methi. I'm putting 3 green chilies, the spicy ones. That's optional, and you can adjust for however spicy or not spicy you want. About, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 cloves of garlic, about 1 inch piece of ginger. I also have about a handful of coriander stalks, not the leaves. I have some leaves mixed in, but it's the stalk of the coriander. And then I have 5 tomatoes. These are pretty good sized tomatoes, so I'm only using 5 tomatoes instead of the 6 called for in the recipe. Okay, so I'm gonna roughly chop the tomatoes, and then everything is ready. And then let's start the gravy. So again, to make it very easy to make these kind of dishes, make sure all your prep work is done beforehand, because it would be really hard to get everything done as you're cooking. So now I have everything ready for my gravy, so I can go ahead and cook the gravy, and everything is right there in front of me. I also will need 2 tablespoons of butter. But other than that, everything is ready. So let's go ahead and start our gravy. To start the gravy, I have a deep, heavy bottom pan on about medium to medium high heat, and I have 2 tablespoons of oil. As soon as the oil gets hot, I'm going to add my onion, cumin seeds, cinnamon, and bay leaf mixture, and then I will add the rest of the spices and the vegetables. Tomatoes I roughly chopped, and I've taken most of the seeds out. Again, this is going to all become a gravy in a blender, so that's why I didn't really need to chop or finely dice any of the vegetables that's going in. Just like any other recipe, whether you're reading it in a magazine or watching a YouTube video, please make sure that you watch or read the recipe thoroughly at least once before trying it, because you never know what steps are needed and in what order. For example, also, this recipe requires that you have a blender, because we're gonna blend everything for the gravy. So if you don't have a blender, then it would be really hard to make this recipe. So just know that you will need a blender. Okay, so let's check it out and see if our oil is hot. I'm gonna add a couple of cumin seeds, and they're sizzling. So the oil is hot. And I'm gonna add just the onions and the whole spices. I'm gonna cook this for about a minute and then add the rest of the ingredients in. My onions have been cooking nicely. So at this point, I'm going to add the rest of the stuff. So I have my 5 chopped tomatoes, and then all of this. So my garlic, ginger, the red chilies, cashew, green chilies, and kasuri methi. Along with it, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of butter. Yes, that's a lot of butter, but this is called makhani vegetables. So makhani sabji, and makhani means butter, so it's going to have the butter. So definitely not a low-calorie food, but it is delicious and it does have a good amount of vegetables. I'm going to add about a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric, 1 heaping teaspoon of coriander powder. And you can also add some red chili powder. I'm not going to because my green chilies are pretty spicy. So I want to keep this not that spicy. And then salt to taste. My butter was salted. So again, if your butter is salted versus unsalted, keep them in mind as you add the salt. And then I'm going to add those coriander stuff. Okay, I'm going to toss this for a minute, add some water, and then, so right now it's cooking medium. I'm going to, once I cook for about a minute on medium to medium high, I'm going to add some water and then cook for about 15 minutes at low temperature. Okay, so I've let all of this saute for about a minute. I'm now going to add enough hot water just to cover the tomatoes, not too much. So as long as all the tomatoes are covered, so all the vegetables should be covered. And this water is hot so that the temperature doesn't go down. Okay, and now I'm going to turn the heat to low and cover this and let the vegetables soften for about 15-20 minutes. Okay, I've turned the heat to low, I've covered it, and now I'm gonna set the timer for 15 minutes and then check it at the end to see how much longer we need to cook this. So while this is cooking, let's go ahead and prepare our vegetables that are going to go into this gravy. The vegetables I would be using today are cauliflower, peas, mixed bell peppers, and potato. The original recipe calls for cauliflower, peas, green beans, and a capsicum, which is green pepper. No potato, but I like potato in the curry. I think it tastes really good. And also I'm using all frozen vegetables except for the potato. Potato's fresh, but the rest are frozen just so that it's easier. Everything's already chopped and it makes it much easier. So I'm using frozen cauliflower, frozen peas, frozen mixed peppers, and then a fresh. This is 2 potatoes, 2 medium-sized potatoes cut about roughly the same size as the cauliflower. So all my vegetables are done. This was 2 seconds of prep time since it was all frozen. And now let's toss the vegetables and then check on the curry. So you're cooking the vegetables briefly. I have a wok on about medium heat and I let it get really hot and I added 1 tablespoon of oil. And now I'm going to add about 1/2 teaspoon of cumin. And then I'm going to add my potatoes. Since these are raw, this goes in first. And be careful when you add the potatoes because it might splatter and it gets really hot. So I'm gonna let this cook briefly. I'm gonna add a little salt and let it cook briefly, and then I'll add all the frozen vegetables. Because the rest of the vegetables are frozen, they don't need to cook as long. If you were using fresh cauliflower and other fresh vegetables, they may need to cook a little bit longer. But this is frozen vegetables, they're already blanched, so you don't need to cook it that much longer. So let's cook our potatoes briefly, and then we'll add the other vegetables. I just added a splash of hot water to speed the process of the potatoes cooking. I'm gonna cover this and let it cook for about 2 minutes. The potatoes have come along nicely. When I poke it, my spatula goes through, so it's almost cooked. I'm gonna throw in the rest of the vegetables and then let it cook briefly. Remember, since the cauliflower, peas, and green peppers were frozen, they won't take as long to cook. And again, the only spice in here is a little salt and about a half a teaspoon of cumin seeds. So all I had was 1 tablespoon of oil. When it got hot, super hot, added the cumin seeds, tossed in the potatoes, a little salt and a little hot water, let it cook briefly until the potatoes were semi-soft, and then just added all the frozen vegetables. Now, if you're not using any fresh potatoes and using only frozen vegetables, you can add actually a bag of mixed vegetables that everything just comes in, and it also even has carrots and green beans. Then you don't need to do it in 2 steps. As soon as the oil gets hot, you can just toss in your bag of frozen vegetables. So all in all, this is about 2 cups of vegetables. I'm going to let everything cook briefly until the frozen vegetables are cooked thoroughly and they've lost that frozenness. And then I'm going to cool everything, and then we're going to finish up our gravy. Our vegetables have come along nicely, and you want them not to be mushy. You want them still to have a little crispiness, so they look great. I'm going to turn the heat off and then let them cool down, and when the gravy is ready, we'll add the vegetables to the gravy. My 15-minute timer just went off, so let's give it a try. Tomatoes have nice and softened. All right, everything looks good. All right, I'm going to turn the gas off and let this mixture cool before blending everything in the blender. And meanwhile, my vegetables have also cooked that are going to go in this gravy, and they're cooling right now. All right, that looks really good. It looks nice and soft. So this is gonna be an interesting dish. I've never tried and make something like this, so hopefully it'll turn out great. All right, let's turn everything off and let this whole mixture thoroughly cook before we blend it. Our gravy mixture has cooled down sufficiently, so I'm gonna go ahead and blend everything. But before I blend it, I'm gonna take out these 2 big bay leaves. Everything else can stay. So I'm gonna just take out the bay leaves and blend this to a smooth paste. Okay, all my gravy ingredients are in the blender, and I'm going to blend this to make a smooth paste. So now my blender is pretty powerful, so it's not going to take me long. If your blender is not so powerful, you may either need to add more liquid or blend it for a longer period of time. I haven't added any additional water. There was sufficient water in the gravy to blend it. Once I blend it, I'll see how much more water if I need to add anything. All right, my gravy has pureed really nicely. It's a fine paste, but I'm still going to strain it using a strainer into the pan as I cook it. The final step of my cooking, I have in a heated pan 1 tablespoon of butter and 1 tablespoon of oil. To this, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. So 2 teaspoons of minced garlic in a heated pan with 1 tablespoon of butter and 1 tablespoon of oil. I'm gonna cook the garlic for a bit till that raw garlic taste goes away. And then I'm going to add my gravy. Okay, I don't want to burn my garlic, so I've cooked the garlic for about 30 seconds. And I'm gonna go ahead and add the gravy. Okay, and it will splatter and it's gonna make a huge mess. So I'm gonna have to clean this stove thoroughly. So let's cook this. Now you don't want to leave anything in the blender, so I'm gonna add some water and clean this blender and add it to the pan. My gravy has been heating up for about 4 or 5 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and add the vegetables. They have cooled down sufficiently, so I'm gonna go ahead and add it to the gravy and cook a further 5 minutes. I just added the vegetables and I'm going to cook a further about 5 minutes because the vegetables are cooked, the gravy is pretty much cooked. All it needs is everything to blend together. This is a very versatile gravy. You can add the vegetables like I did. There's flexibility in adding any vegetables. I added that extra potato because I like potatoes with this kind of gravy. You can add paneer, you can add, if you eat meat, you can add chicken. It's the same gravy it's called the makhani. So anything makhani. You can have paneer makhani, chicken makhani, or vegetable makhani. Now I'm also going to toss some paneer that I had frozen from when we made our lasuni palak paneer. That's a great recipe. Please check that video out. I'm going to link it below, but that's a great recipe for lasuni, which is garlicky paneer, palak paneer. But I had some paneer left over from that, which I had frozen. So I'm gonna go ahead and toss this in here as well. So that now we not only have all the vegetables, but we'll have the nice paneer. So at this point, I'm gonna let this cook for about 5 minutes, give it a taste to adjust any salt, and then add our final sprinkling of some garam masala and some kasuri methi and fresh coriander leaves. And then our vegetable paneer makhani is done. It looks delicious, smells unbelievable. This looks amazing. I tasted it. It was perfect. I didn't have to add anything. The original recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of honey. I didn't add that. I don't like my gravy sweet. It has the nice sweetness from the onions already. So I didn't add any additional sweetness. So let's finishing off by adding a little bit of kasuri methi and then a pinch of garam masala. And I'm not going to add any more additional red chili powder because I want everyone to enjoy it. So this is perfect spiciness. And then once before serving, I'll add a handful of chopped coriander. So we're just gonna let this sit for a couple more minutes and it's done. Some changes I made to this recipe was I used a mixture of fresh and frozen vegetables. I added potato and some extra paneer I had. I didn't add any additional sweetener, and I also didn't add any cream. This turned out to be a pretty easy recipe to follow, and it turned out also to be a flexible recipe to follow. If you enjoyed this recipe, please give me a share and a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.